Yusuf, welcome.
Thank you. You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Glad to have you. We're happy to have you with us today in an episode of the Business Forum. Before we begin, Yusuf, regarding our topic today, I want to know, who is Yusuf Al-Harbi?
Mashallah, thank you. And greetings to you and to the listeners and viewers. If I may say so, I am very happy to be here with you personally and with your esteemed self. I'm also very pleased that this is one of the interviews that will be presented through the Yusuf Al-Harbi podcast. I am the CEO of Franchise Art, a company specialized in business development, and also the CEO of Sniper, a business accelerator specialized in developing, growing, and advancing businesses and projects from one stage to another. I was an employee at Sabic Bank and have experience in the franchise field since 2014. I am also a member of the franchise committee at the Chamber of Commerce for several terms. My specialization is in investment, acquisitions, and the process of developing and growing projects.
Where would you ask to start? Shall we begin with franchising, the business accelerator, or the topic of acquisitions?
We can start with franchising and delve into the related topics, because we consider franchising to be the spiritual father of all businesses, enterprises, and projects.
All right, first of all, can you explain to us what franchising means?
Franchising, before defining it, it's a tool and a double-edged sword at that, meaning if it's used correctly, it's beneficial, but if not, it can negatively impact the brand. And usually the challenge with franchising is that it's both a strategy and a business model at the same time. And you won't find this in anything else except franchising. In a very brief way, usually when companies want to expand or enter new markets or new cities, or if they have a strategy where they say, we want to acquire in order to grow, or we want to enter new markets, cities, or countries with our own capital, or something similar, or we look for an agent, or we look for a representative, or we look for a strategic partner to help us grow, expand, and enter new markets, just foreign companies in the Saudi market now, they don't always enter through franchising. Sometimes they enter through an agency or through a strategic partner or in other ways or through the company itself. For example, if they are giant companies, they might enter on their own. Franchising is a strategy used for expansion, spreading, entering, and penetrating markets. And at the same time, it is a business model that must fit the market you are targeting. And it's not necessarily the case that if you succeed in the Saudi market with a certain business model, that same model will succeed in a European, American, North African, or other market. So here, it's essential to arrange, organize, or refine the brand or trademark in terms of the business model to suit the market you are targeting.
All right, mashallah, you move quickly. The question about franchising, is it giving the brand to someone in a certain area so that they operate under this brand? Is that correct?
Its definition is actually a bit more precise.
We want a definition that we can understand.
If we say give, it means giving it for free. You actually sell it to them. You sell them the franchise rights.
Is it more accurate to say you sell it or lease it?
They all come together. You either sell the franchise rights for a certain period under specific conditions, or you lease out a successful business model for a set time. Personally, I prefer that you sell it. You sell the franchise rights for a certain period, under certain conditions, in a specific area. These conditions are detailed in franchise contracts, so it's closer to selling commercial franchise rights, but you could also use or lease them.
All right, give me a model just so I and my viewers can understand. Give us a small example of these franchises, something that...
Like McDonald's, the world-famous fast food giant, Century 21, the well-known real estate company, UPS, the well-recognized delivery company, FedEx, you name it.
All of these are franchises.
They are all franchise companies, or they sell franchise rights to international companies.
All right, now this franchise, let's start with this. As a listener, from your perspective, if I want to get into this franchise, am I, in your honest view, truly and fully qualified and genuinely ready to enter and take a franchise? Honestly, do I, as an ordinary person who has the money, but just as a regular person, can I take a franchise? Am I qualified for this or not? Do I really need to have qualifications in the market? By qualifications, I don't mean certificates qualifications here, I mean having the knowledge to enter this market.
Actually, there aren't specific regulations that they give you. To put it simply, there are individuals who own franchises someone started with just one branch. There was a person in Europe who owned nearly 60 Subway branches in Europe. He started buying Subway in the 70s and reached 60 and eventually 10-0.
So he had a franchise?
Franchise.
Was his specialty Subway?
He specializes in buying Subway in Europe. So he owned about 60 units. There are companies that stand out because they have 70 or 80 well-known brands, tea brands and others. Their business is to buy some of these brands. There are also other companies that buy brands, and if a brand succeeds with them, they keep it. If a brand doesn't succeed with them, they drop it. So that's the company strategy or the individual strategy. Some companies will tell you, honestly, I don't buy franchises. I create my own brand. I have enough experience to create my own brand in any sector I want. And truly, there are people who say, I buy a successful concept, replicate it, and keep going with it, so my risks are lower in terms of exits. Meaning, if I don't own the brand, I just wait out the rest of the contract, or I exit, or I sell it back to the owner of the brand. So, in short, it's just a business, but it has the name franchise. In other words, it's a business you expand in. But keep in mind, it's not yours. It's not your property.
The brand is important.
The brand, you're not the one expanding it.
Why don't I start with my own brand, for example? What's the difference between this and that?
Honestly, Caleb, not everyone has the ability to build a proper business model. I mean, now you say, look at the market. How many franchise businesses do we see closing down? But how many grocery stores close down? How many car repair shops close down? How many shops? How many training centers shut down? How many gyms have shut down? It's not just franchises, but with franchises, it's more visible to people. When someone loses money, they raise their voice and say, they made me lose money. I invested in such and such brand, and unfortunately, they didn't support me. And they even filed a lawsuit against me, and there were problems. So it gets attention. But in reality, every business model can succeed or fail.
I'm glad you brought this up. The term business model, in simple terms, can be understood as a ready-to-implement, practical daily action plan, right?
That's part of it. Look, the business model involves a lot of details. I'll try to summarize it for you and give you an example. 5 years ago, the business model for cafes was to have a space of at least 200 to 300 square meters. And cafes used to take pride in that. They would say, I have a large space and 2 floors. But now the business model has shifted to smaller spaces. It became drive-through with spaces as small as 50 square meters. Now, what they call neighborhood kiosks have appeared in residential areas. Why is that? Because of changes in prices. Rents affect the business model. Competition, a shortage of employees has made it an experiment. Even coffee itself has changed, for example. Before, a cafe was a place where you would sit down. Now, no coffee will bring anything. So not all cafes are suitable to be places for sitting anymore. Or let's say as a place to hang out, they're just not suitable now. The business model has changed. This is the business model we've been talking about. The business model that works now. 5 years ago, you would operate in a space of 200 or 300 square meters. Now I operate in 120 square meters. It could even be 100 square meters. That's the business model.
So the company I'm getting the franchise from has already prepared for this business model, as far as I know, right?
Model and more sometimes.
More than one business model.
For example, Subway, they have large spaces, but they also have spaces as small as 2 by 2 meters or 3 meters in train stations, for instance, in Europe and America. You can also find them in shopping malls. In towers, you can find very small spaces. That's the business model. The number of employees, the number of working hours, the menu. Sometimes the menu differs from one place to another. For example, in some restaurants, you find breakfast. In others, you don't find breakfast. That's the business model. So the business model must fit the needs of the market. And does the market really need this business model or not?
Okay, so how do I know as a buyer or as someone renting this brand?
Unfortunately, this is one of the things where sometimes the brand owner or the franchisee, the one buying the franchise rights, gets deceived. Branding can sometimes be dazzling and attractive. But when you get into the business details or the business model, you find that it's a disaster. It's falling apart from the inside. There are failures. There are 2 elements, 3 main elements. Of course, unfortunately, most franchisees don't understand these things. These are what allow you to distinguish whether a franchise is good or not. The business model, the management, and honestly, the management is a disaster. I'll explain to you now. The strength of the brand and marketing, these are the 3 main pillars. Of course, there are other additional factors, the project cost and whether it works everywhere or not. For example, there are projects that work in Riyadh, but honestly wouldn't work in Rafah or in Mecca or Al Haramain or Al Batinah. They just wouldn't work. It might work in southern Saudi Arabia, but not in the north. You see, it might work in the shopping mall, but not in a standalone shop here. You really need to understand the business model. The role of the franchise consultant. Unfortunately, most of our franchise consultants don't really understand business.
In consultants who are just franchise consultants, specialize only in franchising.
Unfortunately, the intermediary called the franchise broker or commercial franchise broker gets a license from Monchard. To safeguard things somewhat, I don't want to get into the details, but what does broker mean? A broker. And this is the point that I believe it really needs improvement. And I think Monchard will have a major role and responsibility in improving this issue, which is how we can create a generation of young people who truly understand franchising And I'm talking about a franchise broker must understand investment. You are selling an investment opportunity. You're not just selling, say, a property where everything is clear in front of you. You have to sell an investment opportunity. Even in real estate, as a broker, you need to have an investment mindset. You need to know if the neighborhood is suitable, if the location is suitable, if the building itself or the villa or the project is suitable or not. It's the same thing. You are selling an investment opportunity.
On what basis are the neighborhood and establishments evaluated? For example, you give me a broker's license.
They take courses, training courses. Even lawyers take them, and some real estate brokers as well, so any real estate broker. But in the end, if you ask a real estate broker a few questions, if he doesn't understand the business as a whole, he won't be able to sell you the franchise opportunity, because part of the role of a franchise consultant or franchise broker is this. You help the brand owner work to carefully develop the business model so that it truly fits the franchisee in their specific city as needed. For example, if you're selling a brand in Bishar, it might need some thoughtful adjustments if it's coming from Riyadh, or in Jeddah, it might require some additional development or even further refinement and adaptation depending on the local market. These things, you see, not just anyone understands them, and this is the problem with consultants. They always oversimplify franchising. They'll tell you, just make some operational manuals, but that's not right. Some of these so-called operational manuals are just notebooks with things written down. Honestly, it's a stretch to even call them operational manuals. So the operational manual is the first thing that needs to be improved, and franchising itself only represents about 10% of the whole franchise model. Let me go back to the core idea itself. The franchise broker or franchise consultant, in my opinion, there are two things that must be understood. They need to understand business models and all the processes that take place in the business, from onboarding to quality control processes, to the business model itself, to marketing, to customer experience, to the company's digital transformation of the services provided. All of this must be well understood. Otherwise, it won't work. How can a franchise consultant build proper operational manuals? A franchise broker who sells the franchise as a business opportunity must also understand it as an investment. Is it really suitable for them or not? So here, this is the point. This complements that. And usually, not just anyone can sell a franchise opportunity. Some people just say, well, so-and-so connected me so I could buy, and you end up paying 300,0700, or sometimes even more.
I see. So it's as if the consultant is familiar with every little detail of this project.
A franchise consultant, in particular, cannot be a true consultant unless they are familiar with most of the vital operations that take place in the business. On the contrary, sometimes a franchise consultant is even stronger than the business owner. They are the one who guides them how. They are the one who helps reduce costs and helps improve the project's efficiency and helps develop the business model. Maybe your business model is just one, but they can turn it into 2 or 3. They are the one who helps you attract buyers or those to whom you sell the franchise rights, and helps you participate in exhibitions and present a good image. They are the one who helps you build a marketing strategy. So when it comes to franchising, not just anyone can do it, just that. Franchise consultants. Honestly, we can count them on one hand, and even then we're falling short. We are still learning. We still have shortcomings in some areas. And I think we need to move on to another stage.
Okay, this consultant, if he sits with me and sees my personality, will he tell me honestly whether this is suitable for me or not, based on my personality and what he observes?
He should look. Let me tell you something. Why does franchising exist? For 2 reasons. Basically, it's because there are companies, especially in America. America is a very large country. So if, for example, they're in Oregon in the West and want to sell in the East in New York, it's difficult to manage what's in New York, for instance. So he needed someone to buy in New York, someone in Florida, someone in Texas, and so on. So he could be relieved of that burden and simply focus on expanding, with his role being to provide logistical support. This is similar in Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is a large country. So you need to grant a commercial franchisee in the north, in Al Jauf, or in Arar, or even in Jazan, or in Najran, or preferably elsewhere. Who do you sell it to? One of the area's kids from the area who understands business and understands the area itself.
So someone local who understands business.
Of course, I would say here you don't go back to his culture, what is his culture, but rather you look at his personality in general. And I believe there are 2 main things: his communication skills, his commitment during the negotiation period. Third, you check if his financial history is good. If he has the capability and the desire, you see if he has enthusiasm, by the way. They usually come to you with enthusiasm at the beginning, but after 2 or 3 years, he buys the second and third brand. And God willing, they develop, grow, and create their own first brand. And this is normal. This brings me back to square one. And I always tell you a very, very, very important point in every business. especially in franchising, which is ethics. Franchising is based on ethics because you are revealing your secrets to the franchisee. If the franchisee gets upset with you tomorrow and you've made all the internal and administrative issues clear and you've shown them your entire menu, recipes, and your manufacturing or production process, then here's a problem. So if, of course, all businesses, projects, and everything are based on ethics, there's no debate about this, but it remains especially clear and evident in the franchise system in a truly remarkable way. Because franchising is built on ethics in a way you can't even imagine. Anyone who enters it without ethics will not succeed in business. That's why you see some brands, unfortunately, disappear from the market. They didn't keep their promises, they didn't honor the agreements, and they didn't stick to the contracts. And the same thing happens with the franchisee. He buys in, gets excited at first, and then in the end says, come take your brand back, or even competes with the brand.